We have a terrific task ahead of us. We have a shattered world around us, and we must help to rebuild it.
Сегодня еще раз обращаюсь ко всем гражданам России.
The President of the United States.
Mr. Gorbachev, tear down this wall.
And so, my fellow Americans, ask not what your country can do for you. Ask what you can do for your country.
Hello and welcome to the 6th episode, I believe, of Seats of Power radio show. Today we have as a very special guest Professor Simon Mercieca. Welcome.
Welcome to everybody and all your guests and all your listeners for today's program.
Thank you for accepting the invitation, firstly, obviously. So today we kind of want to speak about essentially... So we've already had an episode on the Russian and Ukraine war situation, but we kind of were talking about the ongoing context, essentially.
Yes.
Whereas now we kind of wanted to dive deep into the kind of context historically that led up to the situation. Obviously, you teach history at the university, so I figured there's no better guest to do this with. I have a couple of questions for you, but I kind of just want to start the conversation first and then see where it goes.
Okay.
So, I guess my first, and it is a rather large, loaded question, but...
Don't worry.
So we have heard many different stories about the Ukraine situation from many different parties. So you have the US establishment, NATO, and the EU, and then you have Putin's view, for example, through his interview with Tucker Carlson and others. Yes. In your view, what is a correct sequence of events that people can't really debate against? Because you hear a lot of people saying it's a coup, it's not a coup in Ukraine, things like that, for example.
Look, for me, Ukraine is a power struggle. I think the biggest mistake was done by the West and not by Russia. This is my position. I had been in Europe, I have seen professors. The problem was, like what has happened in Malta, and this has continuously happened in history, is that people continue to look at the past. I'm talking again as a historian, and think that past is going to repeat itself. Therefore, when there was the fall of the Soviet Union, there was always the fear that Russia would once again expand westwards. And therefore, the fear started with the Balkan states and Finland. These were lands which historically, even Finland, was part of Russia. Therefore, there was always this fear Russia might reclaim that land. Now, one has to think about one important factor. Russia is the biggest country in the world. This is a fact. And Russia, like all the rest, is in a demographic regression. Mm-hmm. In other words, the population in Russia is decreasing because Russia, like us here in Malta and all the West, the families are smaller, getting smaller and smaller. Therefore, normally, land expansion happened in history because there was population increases. If you have population increase, you're going to have this need, if you want, call it what you want, for people where you're going to host them. And in the past, it was an agrarian system. Therefore, a small family needed big lands to cultivate against the cities where people can live even in cubicles. Therefore, this is the situation. And I think there was this old thinking, which the Russians were very forward-looking. When Russia, the system of communism failed, Russia realized that system did not work. Okay? And they wanted even to make a new slate. And the issue is here that Russia wanted even to join NATO under Yeltsin. The West said no. There was only one agreement with Russia, and it was that the Russian under Gorbachev accepted that the East will become part of Germany, and even the East will be part of NATO, because West Germany was in NATO. But then the history of NATO had to stop there. And America said, yes, there's no problem. We're not going to expand westwards. NATO was going to stop there. That was the assurance given. These are historical facts by Russia, by the West to Russia. And I still remember I was debating, for me, once the Soviet Pact dissolved, I think the next move should have been for the West to dissolve NATO. This is my opinion. Now, can people agree or disagree? This is my opinion. And this did not happen. And what we are seeing is escalations and changing of tensions. Let's hope with Trump coming to power, a new sort of vision comes through. And there are parallels in history. Because I don't know what's going to happen with Trump. Because probably we can move to a situation where Russia will become an ally of America, and America will dump Europe. This could be even a possibility. Okay? And I can explain on the course of this discussion with you why this can take place. But let's forget the issue of Russia. Let's go to history, Wood said. Let's go to the 19th century. The big power in the 19th century, that in those days we don't talk about superpowers, was Great Britain. And we were part, in our small scale, Malta, part of this colonial system. And what was the argument? And Malta became even important in this argument in the 19th century. That practically throughout the 19th century, only towards the end, the situation changed. The perception was that always Britain, London thinks, who's going to be my next enemy? And London, they always thought it's going to be France. And therefore there was a whole system in the 19th century trying to keep France at bay. And this came out for the simple reason that people continue to think, but in the 18th century, with whom we fought? France. In the beginning of the 18th, before the revolution, we were talking about Napoleon. Napoleon created the first great war in history. But there was even the First World War, which was the 7-Year War, which included everywhere. It led to the American War of Independence. Our enemy, France. Our ally, Germany. Because the English monarchy is German. After James II, the famous glorious revolution of 1688. Germany. And they continued to think in those terms. Then what happened? Bismarck comes onto the scene. He creates a bigger Germany. And someone in London will start saying, the Germans expanded not only military on land, but even at sea. They are going to be a threat. And the whole concept changed. Now, why I'm saying this? Because the situation, how I'm folding it is, America has a choice. Either the choice is that Russia, China, and Iran, they will continue with their alliance. And this is a very strong alliance. It's an alliance which include big money. And therefore, there are two schools of thought in America. The first school of thought, which probably with Trump will gain power, is let's befriend Russia. The other school of thought is let's fragment Russia. Russia is a big country, let's fragment it. And this is the major idea in Europe, especially among what we used to call the Eastern Europe. Today, they prefer to call themselves Central Europe. Therefore, by calling themselves Central Europe, they are saying that East Europe is Russia. Therefore, they are going to the concept of John Paul II, if you remember, who said that the Europe starts from the Atlantic up to the Urals, if you want to include Russia. Obviously, Russia is bigger than Europe. Russia has extensive territory into Asia. But I'm stopped there. Russia has a lot of mineral resources. It's one of the richest countries in the world. This is a fact. Therefore, what we're going to have? This is the dilemma of America. And this is the dilemma of two American systems, which, ironically enough, one which is pushing for war are the Democrats. And now those who are pushing for peace are the Republicans, the hawks and the doves. The situation have changed. Because normally it was the Democrats in America who were the doves now saying, let's be peaceful, let's go to an agreement. The Republicans, let's go to war, Iran. Now the situation has changed. Therefore, you know how politics are liquid, very fluid. And this is what's happening, in my opinion, on the world stage. And what happened there, again, as a historian, I think they tried to recreate the Crimean War of the middle of the 19th century. No, therefore they wanted to fight Russia while not fighting Russia directly. Therefore, let's fight Russia in Ukraine. Okay, so and Ukraine became a testing ground with big tragedy for the people of Ukraine. You have to think, I had a meeting with Russians, very high officials and Russian officials, in these casual discussions. And it struck me how they are looking at the war. For them, this is not a war, this is a civil war. Now, you can agree with their vision, with their perspective or not, but they are seeing themselves. For us, this is a civil war. And this, to a certain extent, makes sense, because there is the American Civil War. If you look at the Americans, how they are looking at the First and Second World War in the literature, they are calling it is a civil war between Europeans. And the Russians are looking even at this war. Now, you can disagree with that view. You have all the right to do that. But I think let's see the perspective of the other. The others are seeing this as a civil war. Finally, Ukraine is a recent creation. Ukraine is made out of a lot of nations. Ukraine is around another Balkan question, if you want, Not half, but a big chunk of Ukraine is lived by Russians. And Russia didn't want to do the mistake that had happened with the Balkans. Because in the Balkans, in Latvia, Estonia, and so forth, I've been there, there are strong Russian communities put there. And now they are being discriminated. And the first thing that Russia said for Ukraine, who started this war, they told them, respect the Russian minorities. But Europe has a tendency. Europe wants others to respect the Russian minorities. Europe wants others to respect the decisions. But then they don't want to respect those decisions. Yeah, we had the Catalan who took a vote of separation from Spain. Did it go through? Europe said no. They should remain part of Spain. Therefore, this is all a political jargon. And this is why I think what's coming out, even these new developments, the end of Biden was a figurehead finally. There are other people doing the job. He was even in full in his senses. But let's not, had vested interest, personal vested interest, big monies. Some of that money passed even through Malta, the SATA Bank, if you remember the story. Okay, through his son Biden. Now his son Biden has been forgiven and pardoned, by the father, the president. These are facts. Whether this is good or not, I leave that to the listener or viewer to make his judgments. But this is the truth of all at all. Therefore, what we're going to, and this is why even I'll come to Malta. I'm one of those who strongly believe in our neutrality. And I think this is my personal opinion. Therefore, you can disagree with my personal opinion. And I think if you're looking at the situation, how it's developing, then there were people, even in Maltese government and officials and diplomats, pushing that we should join NATO. Don't rush. History teaches you one thing. Don't think about the situation today. Think where we are going to be in 10, 20, 30 years' time.
Yeah.
And probably, I don't know whether NATO will fizzle out, but Trump definitely, he's not a keen of NATO. He's not a keen, and they made already before when he was president, if NATO are afraid of Russia, they should pay for their budget. Why should we Americans pay for their budget? Because what happened in this process? On an economic financial point of view, America is losing its grip. She's not the biggest economic power. Country like China, she's sat there silently. She never participated in big wars. She didn't spend money on wars of others. And what's now the situation? China is a big economic force. Okay? And this is why neutrality is important. You know that Malta was the first country that have recognized China? Malta was the first country that have recognized Vietnam. This is why the Chinese have a lot of respect towards this small, this rock, in the middle of this is what we are. We live on a rock. Come on, we're just London is even bigger than Malta. Yeah. We're just a quarter in London that have a prime minister for a ministry and so forth and so on.
I want to touch up on something you said, which I agree with. NATO or the Americans promised Gorbachev that they would not expand 1 inch eastward. That is well known, I think, in the literature. But what do you think changed that policy for NATO, for the US? Why did they feel like they had to reverse it?
That is a very interesting question, but before I answer that question, there was even collaboration by Russia and the NATO when NATO attacked Afghanistan.
Yes.
The Russians gave them all the logistics. I think the change of heart came first from people in America who were still nostalgic, like what happened, I said, in the 19th century, who still continue to think, who's going to be our next enemy? Russia. Don't trust them. They are not people to be trusted. That was, I think, one of the idea. Then there were these northern, eastern countries, which I met them. I can understand. They came out of this colonial period, the Baltic states. Therefore, Russia is our enemy. Look at Finland. Now even Finland joined NATO. Russia is our enemy. Our enemy, our enemy. Russia would need back the countries. Obviously, Russia really showed interest in the Balkans. One of the reasons why it showed interest, because there were big Russian communities there. Russia has an interest in the Russian communities, but you can blame the Russians for this. Does not America has an interest in the American communities? Imagine if an American got killed here in Malta. What will happen? Come on, it's normal, There was even the Russian pride, which was hit after the whole of the system.
Could you not make?
And then therefore, I think I think we as the West, and can we place myself with the West? I think we can place ourselves with the West now.
Yes.
I think we failed to give the Russians the assurances that we needed, and obviously, okay, you can say Putin is a dictator or not. Putin has a system like the American is a system, and the Chinese have a system. Now we're talking about system of politics, of governance. Okay, these are systems, in my opinion. And the more I get older, the more I realize how they are just systems, nothing else. Even ours is a system. Democracy is just a system of governance, which has has different aspects, could be a little bit better than the one of Assad or the one of China. I don't know, but it's a system finally in the end. If you're not part of that system, you've done. The same thing happens with America. If you're not part of that system, you follow my courses of American history with the Tocqueville. Now, if you're part of the circles of power, you're out. The Native Americans were destroyed. Okay, they were treated even worse than the black people. Okay, but this is part of a system.
I mean,
and therefore, to come to I think there was this psychological fear that Russia might come again and again and again that brought this war. And also there is, I think, then the economic interests of people who want to dismantle Russia to take its resources. Because the West, we don't have those natural resources.
I mean, of course, yes. There's, in a war, there's going to be both sides looking to what they can gain.
Of course.
But so in Russia, for example, because Ukraine is one of the most resource-rich countries as well. I believe it's widely renowned as the world's
granary normally.
Yeah. So you could put that argument that Putin also might have those interests at heart for sure.
No, Putin, I think what had in Russia interests at heart first is Crimea. And that came very out because Putin asked Ukraine 3 things, which Ukraine didn't want to concede, supported by the West. And these 3 things, which they led to the war. These were the 3 things that led to the invasion. First, that Ukraine would be a neutral country.
Yep.
He said no. Obviously, that Ukraine did not join Russia. Now did join NATO, okay? That Ukraine recognized the Russian community of the Donbass and they will be treated equally. And Ukraine said no. Okay? And that Ukraine recognized that Crimea is not hers. It's not hers, it's not Ukraine. Obviously, you have to remember, this were part of the Soviet Union. Therefore, this was Stalin moving borders and giving to Ukraine. Ukraine was Russia, never was part of Ukraine. It was Russian. It was taken by Peter the Great, slowly, and then Catherine, moving, taking this area. And it was always Russian. Therefore, obviously, he moved, Stalin moves, and the communists, move territories, because in those days these were part of the Soviets. Therefore, they didn't make. I'm giving you to administer this part. Obviously, this created, in the long run, points of nationalism, which is fair enough. But he asked for these three things, and Ukraine said no. Now we had the meeting in Paris. As you know, there was Trump for the grand opening of the Notre Dame. And what was the outcome of that meeting? Two things. The fall of Assad. Incidentally or not, it happened after that meeting. And the second thing is that Zelensky now was saying, oh, yes, I want to come to an agreement with the Russians. Up to a minute before that meeting, he was saying, no, we'll never go to an agreement. Give us weapons, long-range weapons, if impossible nuclear weapons, so that we attack the Russians. Is there a connection? I wasn't there. But these are facts.
Yes, you have to look at those things, and you kind of need to connect the dots. That's how politics is studied.
Exactly.
Yes.
Even with
Yeah, go ahead.
you mentioned political systems as well, and with when Putin took office in 2000, which is a fun fact I learned recently, Europe liked him, and they said that it was a promotion of democracy for him
I've
to
seen a
assume
lot of
office.
revisionism regarding Putin.
Yeah,
in the
but
last
then
3 years.
because the context was that Russia had invaded Chechnya at the time as well, and so it was a bit shaky with Europe. And what I wanted to ask is, you mentioned neutrality and Malta being neutral. I'm a bit skeptic of this, as we're part of the European Union per se. Can we really be neutral if we are part of it and we're giving financial aid to Ukraine, for example?
First of all, this is the problem of the European Union, not us. Okay.
Yeah, obviously.
When we joined the European Union, accepted our neutrality. Therefore, let's depart from there. Now, the European Union is changing the goals, the goalpost. But that's the problem of the Union, not of ours. Finally, what's happening this is the difference between
Could I
European
just ask you to
Union.
speak a little to the
Okay, this is the difference between Europe and America. In America, there were small individuals who wanted to create their own state, and the Americans said, forget it. But in America, Trump dictum hit the American people because he said, America first. In America, America first, and then the states. In the European Union, not the European Union first. It's the first states. Look what Macron did. He got rid of the European Union. He didn't even give good positions. Look what Mercosur deals is doing. She's seeing their interests. Therefore, every state, finally in Europe, are the states first. Now, this is part of history. Therefore, if they are the states first, we should do the same as Maltese. I think we should keep our positions very clear. What is our interest as a small nation in the middle of the Mediterranean? To be part of NATO? You can say that could be an interest, because that would be we'll get a lot of money from NATO, we will have nuclear weapons, or our street will be perfect, because obviously if they want to move a nuke from one place to another, they want the perfect streets. That could be. No, I'm not joking. That could be a possibility.
Yes.
Now look how the state of our streets. They're not bad, but definitely they are not the perfect situation. No, they will be always bad, because obviously the military will have all the interest. No, that could be one thing. Is that healthy to our country? I'm not so sure. I'm not so sure. Obviously, I'm not telling you that we're going to send Maltese and they will return back with donkey bags our soldiers, because the modern wars are being fought now by drones, and you're seeing now. Therefore, the Italians would say at a distance, at a distance, long range missiles and so forth. It's much more to be used as a base. And with that same argument, why shouldn't we be a Russian base? Probably it will become a Russian base with that same argument. Making arguments, probably Russia will be even more ready to pay more than NATO to use our bases, because she has no places in the Mediterranean. Therefore, it will be she would be much more ready to pay for the services than the West.
And they've had an aspiration for Malta for centuries.
No, never.
No?
No.
Was I thought wrong?
Look, no, that's something wrong. No. Russia is the only country which never aspired for Malta. There was Levinsky, I cannot say it, his name, and who was sent to Russia in the 18th century. The Russians helped us to in the uprising against the French, but they were never interested really
Ah,
to in Malta.
I may have
itself.
misheard something.
No. But that was in the 18th century. The Russian, even in the Italians, we were conquered by the French, who were by the English, by the Italians, or by the Romans, by the Phoenicians, by the Carthaginians, but we were never by the Russians. Russians, they don't really have interest to govern Malta. But obviously, if you want to make an economic assessment and you want to sell, if you want to be in business, probably I think Russia will be even ready to pay more than NATO to use our bases. If you want to make an economic argument,
yes.
as an economic argument, I'm making it. Let's go. Well, obviously, Maltese will want money, but I think if we pursue the politics of peace. Okay, the politics of war like this can give you an immediate return, unless you're not in the war. Because when we had the First World War, when there was the Crimean War, we're not directly involved, there was good return to the economy. Okay, the prices went up, the dockyards had about 24,000 workers working in the dockyard, in the dockyard and so forth. Sorry, incidentally, it came the night Litta was, no, and then was the others on the Russian side. But this is just a small parenthesis.
I want to stick to one of the points, one of the main points of the Ukrainian conflict at the moment. I think that is most debated, is whether they had a revolution in 2014 or whether they had a coup in 2014.
Look, I will not go into that debate because I leave. This is like the glass half full or half empty. Mm-hmm. It depends on which side you are. You are and you tend to support. But I think this is even something that the Ukrainians should decide.
Yes.
Well, obviously, the Ukrainians, there are a lot of ethnicities. There's even Hungarians. There's even Poles. And this is why, Hungary is acting the way she's acting. Mm-hmm. Yeah, we don't think that Hungary is looking to regain that territory which she lost after the First World War.
Take it from a realist perspective.
I don't know what will going to happen.
Yeah.
You don't know what's going to happen.
No, we're speculating completely.
You can try to predict.
Yeah, I'm trying to predict. I don't know what's going to happen.
Yeah, exactly.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, because Viktor Orban can now he claims he's pro-Putin. He claims a lot. Mm-hmm. Yeah, don't speculate. It's not a speculation. Don't. What's coming in politics. The most someone ever thought that Assad will fall in just 1 week. It was unthinkable. It happened. Obviously because Assad fought, the big powers decided not to continue supporting him. In fact, if you remember, at the start of this advance of Assad, Russia fired missiles from her ships in the Mediterranean. Then everything stopped. Now there is just an interview by Erdogan and saying that the two true leaders at the moment in Europe is he, or in this region, is he and Putin. Is this a defeat for Putin? I don't know.
I think we're way.
I don't know. I don't know how things are going to develop because you don't. No. There is one thing that you have to keep in mind in Trump's policy. In Trump's policy, the security of Israel is absolute. Mm-hmm. Absolute. Mm-hmm. And this is why there can be developments because this was also in the democratic frame of politics. Security of Israel, but the Democrats try to play the cheek. They say, we're pro-Israel, but we're pro-Palestinians. And in 2000, I made a review of a book published by a Palestinian, and he was right. He said, we Palestinians, did always better under the Republicans than under the Democrats. Mm-hmm. Because the Democrats, a lot of talk, we support you. They make us think as if we're going to regain the Palestine again and throw the Jews or the Israelis into the sea. And instead of this happening, we always continue to lose. At least with the Republicans, you know where they are, where we stand.
Fair enough.
Mm-hmm. And I think this is what's going to happen. They want the security of Israel. And probably they are bargaining. That's why I'll tell you, Trump is not much interested in the European quibbles. Okay, and if you look what happened even in the Paris meeting, this was interest for us in Malta, in my opinion, and I wrote it in one of my blog articles. I think the Maltese government should start thinking very seriously about its embassy in Italy. Because it's clearly that for Trump, Meloni, and Giorgia Meloni, until it remains there, is going to be a preferred partner. The dinner finished at the Elysee. He went on with Meloni. They continued to talk. He moved to her chair, not Meloni moved. There was discussing with Elon Musk. Okay, you can hate him as much as you like, but these are the characters now who are going to discuss politics, and their framework is not military. Their framework is economic. Clearly, their framework is economic.
I think.
And in London or England, Great Britain, there is Stammer, which you can like him or not. I don't think he's performing very well. I know, at least, perhaps I can be prejudiced, but it's not performing very well. It's clearly that for the first time there is a clash between Stammer, between Britain and the USA, because obviously. But it could be also because I studied demographics. Trump is of German origin. He's not of British origin or Irish. Okay, I don't know, and it's not that long distance migrants. They were there at the turn of the 20th century. His family to America. It's not like the Kennedys had been there. I don't know for how many decades, if not centuries, in America. I think these are going to have an impact, therefore their feelings are changing. I know perhaps Meloni is a woman and then charm and so forth. You can say whatever you want, but clearly Italy is going to play a role. You love her, you hate her, she's becoming I was one of the first who supported Meloni from the beginning when it was 2%. They attacked me that I am fascist and not fascist and so forth, all this blah, blah, blah. So that not we don't use the usual. But now, she's becoming a state woman. You're doing politics, you're doing international relations, you're doing history. You cannot ignore her.
No, absolutely not.
And this is Italy.
Yep.
Probably Meloni is going to have much bigger say on European stage than Stammer in Britain. And this is irrespective whether Britain was in the EU or not. Therefore, I think even the EU is not going to be a key player. In the next definitely 4 years of Trump's in power. The EU is not going to be a big player. This is true. And this is why, and I will conclude, why neutrality is important. Because this is the advantage that neutrality gives you. Against being just, okay, we're part of the European blocs, I support it, and I'm okay, and Malta joining the European Union. But okay, there's nothing wrong with that. But then we have also to look at our interests.
Yeah. What role do you think Europe plays, though? Because there's a whole thing going on.
Europe is not going to play any role.
And nothing?
But no, nothing. Because what the role is going to be played is by the nation states. Now you have to wait what's going to happen in Germany with the elections. It's clearly, even Macron, look at Macron. No, the European Union worked on two big nations, Germany and France. It was created because these two countries went to war against each other because of a city, which is called Strasbourg. Okay, they debating this city from the time of Louis XIV, the Sun King, whether that's French or German. Okay, this is a whole issue. Okay, not even with Belgium, which half of Belgium is French. They are debating this Belgium to return to France, But this is the situation. Okay, Macron at the moment, he's behaving. I think has become, not behaving, it's turning himself at this stage, I don't know what's going to happen, the worst enemy of the European Union. Because he's acting independently of the European interest. Probably he's seeing von der Leyen much more doing the interests of Germany, and at the end of the day, therefore it's using her position as head of the Commission, okay, to do the dare to work for Germany, okay, against the interests of France. Finally, France will take care, as I said. We have a different system from America. America, there are states. Okay, there's governors of states. They all have the same political system. In Europe, we have different political systems. And finally, all these states, where they push together and they stay together in the name of America. Therefore, America first. Now the concept of Trump, but this is the concept of the American foundation. In Europe, there is no concept of Europe first.
Yeah, that's fair enough.
You know, if we go to Macron, finally you realize that for him, France first. If you go to Germany, Merkel or whoever, Germany first.
I think that could be one of the main ideas that ends up kind of belittling the EU's influence to basically nothing because it's
There is
nationalism.
forget nationalism. There is no factor that can bring us together.
There's no European.
Probably the only factor that brought the old Europeans together is religion, that there was Christianity.
Not even that anymore.
Not even that anymore, I agree with you. Probably me, as Maltese, I have much more in common with a Tunisian. Because if I go to Tunisia, I can, using my Semitic Maltese, I can communicate with a Tunisian. If I want milk, I go and tell him I want halib. Tina halib ويفهمني. He will understand me what I said, give him a milk. Then with someone who's in Lithuania.
Yeah, fair enough.
No, the only thing that I have with Lithuania, to make it milder, is that we both have a Christian common heritage. Can I use that? Beyond that, we have nothing. And don't tell me laws and no laws, human rights, they are all.
Fair enough. I'm in agreement with you, really.
Okay, we created the European Court, which is fair enough, we're trying, you know. You cannot undermine that. But still, the person in the street, you know, your mothers, what feeling they have with Lithuania. At least we try to create a common currency, which I have nothing against it, even if we have ruined our country because we don't know where our gold reserves are. Now we don't anymore control our money, but still we're a small currency. And therefore, give and take, I think that was a good idea. It's in our interest to have Europe, you know. We put down borders, which I think is a good thing, even for the young ones, so that you can travel. Okay, the European Union is helping a lot of people to travel, young people to go around, even paying. I think that's a good thing because obviously by meeting people, by mixing people, by seeing other cultures, you enhance yourself. Okay, that is a good thing. But still, I think we're still far, far away to start thinking in terms of Europe first.
Europe is
and those who say Europe first in Brussels, in reality, they don't believe it.
And Europe isn't culturally hegemonous, not hegemonous.
But even you can say that
Homogeneous.
even for America, it's not even culturally homogeneous.
But it's much closer than Europe.
No,
obviously.
it's a system. It's a system that they have. That the concept is you've got America first. Look what happened in Europe, and we're diverting a little bit. But I was involved because I remember I used to work with Father Peter, and there was all this issue of introducing a European constitution. Do you remember? I still have them in Maltese.
We weren't born then, but you were.
I was.
The European, to create a common constitution. It went through?
No.
No.
Well, France and the Netherlands decided against it?
France, imagine.
Yeah. I mean, France makes sense. Obviously.
No, it doesn't make sense. It shows that nationalism.
No, but it
and
makes
this is the country who says, look, I am against nationalism. This is the country of the revolution. This is the country of égalité. Okay. Liberté.
I'm saying
fraternité.
Modern France makes sense nowadays. And I don't think Europe first. I think Malta first personally. Because
that's how we're thinking. Yes,
the state comes first. There's no European identity. There's no.
But if you're an American, I am from Texas. Probably I don't know.
America first.
Yeah, America first.
Everyone puts the American flag outside. Everyone.
You know,
where you go.
There is one flag. Even the European flag. It doesn't.
No, I don't think it holds any significance really.
At all. No.
In my opinion, as a European student.
You know, if I'll tell you which you prefer, the Maltese flag or the American or the European flag.
No, clearly the Maltese flag. I mean, it's hard to feel a sense of pride towards a union, which is practically a Franco-German alliance.
I do think it's more than that. That's a score, but I think it's more than that.
It's more than that, to be honest. But I think this war in Ukraine, it didn't help the European Union.
No, definitely didn't.
To remain on the topic,
It
didn't help. You know, and they were saying, let's bombard Russia, let's do this, let's do that. It created much more economic problems for the Union. Because we had resources coming in. Did we gain from this war as European people, as European nations?
No.
Now forget whether Russia is the culprit or did we gain from this war? In my opinion, no.
Didn't gain anything.
We're gaining by making a statement that we should join the NATO or Russia is the culprit in this war or not as a country. I don't think so.
European citizens, they took an economic hit individually for a country which, due to its corruption, would have never joined the Union anyways.
It doesn't fit the Copenhagen criteria at all.
It wouldn't have fit Europe anyways. But the individual citizens, are punished because of the war.
Therefore, this has continued to decrease the faith in the European Union.
No, obviously, because it's putting sanctions on Russia, even with what happened with Nord Stream as well, same thing.
No, but the Nord Stream was destroyed by the Americans.
Yeah, exactly.
Now it's a fact. Now it's not.
Yeah.
It's a fact.
Yeah, but
This is
hit us
madness.
Europeans.
No, this is madness.
It hit us Europeans. That's my skepticism about even Ukraine in general, even before the war started. Ukraine is a very
I saw
corrupt
something
country.
that really made me laugh, and apparently someone pointed out that the explosion of Nord Stream 2 was it,
Two.
released so much CO2 in the atmosphere that it was actually one of the worst environmental disasters.
I don't know about it.
I heard that is
Not sure.
It could be.
it could be right. No, just follow that for a second. Because it's very funny in the fact that
And you're talking about climate change.
yeah, you're coming to an issue like climate change, and one of the worst disasters anyone has ever caused was caused by the Americans, and the people who suffered the most were the Europeans. You kind of ask yourself, okay, so why aren't the Europeans putting sanctions on America? My point being is that
I know, and
we
that's
know
point, yeah.
they know who
He's being
blew it.
provocative,
I
no?
know, I know.
They know who blew it up, but people don't want to, from Europe, they don't really want to point the finger to who the actual culprit is.
Obviously, it's
No.
like the thing with the whole war in general.
Yeah, of course. No. Coming to my point, we hear a lot, obviously, in the media like that this invasion is unprovoked on a sovereign and democratic country like Ukraine. What are your thoughts on that, line of rhetoric, I guess?
It is rhetoric because if there wasn't the big powers behind it, there would have been no invasion. Okay, in my opinion, let's start from that.
And that's fact.
But I return to the point I was making. What was Europe's gain from this war? Did it increase our sentiment that we are Europeans or decrease them, or none?
Definitely.
I think decrease them,
decrease.
but that's my opinion. I'm not saying that.
my opinion.
No, someone else can say no and make a different
debatable.
argument and then debatable. But that's fair enough. But did we?
No,
Well,
no.
where we're heading as a European nation.
That's the main problem. We don't have really a vision, do we?
No.
There's nothing that unites us.
Yeah, exactly.
Not even common culture.
No.
Nothing.
But that's always going to be a setback for Europe because there's so many.
No, it's not a setback. No, because America, there was nothing to unite them,
There needs to be
Okay.
something.
and they succeeded to create.
Fair enough.
Okay, there wasn't. It was one of the most divergent people. There was one thing that united them, and that's why Trump won against. It was religious persecution. The founders of America, or the white founders of America, they were all escaping religious persecution. Therefore, for them, religious freedom became very important. It's a maximum. The idea of freedom is a maximum. And then they united with the dollar. To make money is a maximum. The American dream that if you're nobody, you can become a millionaire. Okay? This American dream is there. And Trump represents a little bit this American dream.
Yeah.
You can accuse Trump that he's stupid, imbecile. I am the stupid. He travels with his own private plane. I use a second-hand car. Yeah, but no, it's true. Economically, he represents this American dream to a certain extent. And therefore, this idea of culture, the unification of culture, the fact that at some point in America, even with the Democrats pushing in certain gender agendas, it's not the question that you're pushing gender agendas. You're trying to persecute, literally, those who are opposed to the agendas. This was the whole problem. Persecution, those of who are against. This created a backlash in America. Because America is created by people who had been victims of persecution. Therefore, you cannot persecute then your own people. I think this continued to affirm Trump as on his own territory. Okay, but I think, as I said, and this could be a good even point for Europe, because if they are going to push on their politics to make America great in terms of economy, and we have to remember that when Trump was in government, before Biden took over, America was having a bull year after bull year. What does a bull year mean? Bull year means a good economic year, fantastic economic year, economy going up and up. Bull year after bull year. Under Biden, there is a big recession. Therefore, obviously, the decisions that politicians take, they have an effect on the economy. Okay, they have an effect on the economy. Now, what type, how, and why, we'll discuss it. But even on economic terms, I don't think Europe is making policies that can make us feel the same. You know that there are cars that work by water. They exist now. Toyota has them, for example, this hydrogen. Okay. You know that you cannot import them to Malta because the European doesn't want them. Because European said you have to import electric cars. Trump was starting importing them in the USA in certain states. Then Biden came in again, electric cars. Obviously, we supported China because now China became the major producers of electric cars with the Germans, Bush and China. But was that in our interest? I mean, now China is, that's why this is what Trumps make him realize, well, what these wars are there for, to make China great, and I'm losing the economic edge. And probably this is something that we're going to see in the future, probably even the United States and Europe staying behind. Why? Because there was some legislator in Brussels with the lobbies trying to push this sort of electricity or of motors against the others. Okay. Is that in our interest? This is why I'm saying it's in our interest.
Yeah.
Probably the electric cars now. I don't know what's going to happen. I'm not against electric cars. I don't want to be misunderstood, But you need power stations to run them. And those who runs by water, by hydrogen, they only emit steam, not smoke.
I have a question that I feel like I can't find a satisfactory answer for. I'm hoping you can give me one.
I'll try.
So a lot of people make the argument that, listen, if Russia really invaded Ukraine because it's on the border, then why didn't it invade other border countries? Now, I've heard many different ones, like just saying, it's the longest stretch of border between Ukraine and Russia and things like that. So do you think it has anything else to do that is perhaps not mentioned? For example, not just because there are Russian communities in Ukraine, or there's ulterior motives that people don't know about, for example?
No, look, the reason why Russia invaded Ukraine is its fear that Russia joined NATO. That's very clear. That was the major reason. Obviously, if Ukraine joined NATO, it would have mean that you've got another country which was part, not now of Europe, because Poland was part of Europe, never part of Russia. And she accepted Russia, Poland joining NATO, even if they disagreed. Accepted Hungary or the rest who joined NATO, even if she disagreed. Now they cross the border because they are trying now to have ex-Soviet countries, part of the heartland, what Russia considers is heartland, joining NATO.
So
and then there is even the issue of Georgia now and the rest. Yeah. They realize, therefore they said, if we're not going to take action now, we are going to be surrounded and we are going to
so that's the reasoning being is that essentially
it's self-defense.
The last two
it's self-defense. So
countries that they cannot allow essentially.
Let's say no now. You've crossed. You went your limit.
With Finland as well, because Finland then Georgia.
Even Finland joined NATO now. Finland was a neutral
that's
state.
What I'm saying. Yeah.
And there is now the issues in Georgia. There is now.
Because obviously people look at it and say, but there was no invasion of Finland and they allowed it to join. So why is Ukraine different?
No, Ukraine is totally different.
Yes,
because,
that's my argument usually, because people tend to overlook it and just look.
Don't think like Georgia. No. These are part of the Russian states. This is like Texas saying, I want to leave the Americans. This is Come on. Okay?
But they have allowed some ex-Soviet countries to join NATO.
No.
Yes.
Okay.
But
the Baltic states, okay, yes, that's how that we agree with that. Okay, that's a good point. But the Baltic states were never really part of Russia. They were taken slowly. They were started to be taken, And even that was a big mistake. They realized, and this is why now they put a stop. Because the Baltic states are the most countries furious for them that Europe should even attack Russia. Okay, that's true about the Baltic states, but that was a stop.
How much influence?
Probably, if there have been a division of the Baltic states, would have been totally different today from what happened, because they were also the divisions created by the Soviet Union. Okay, Lithuania historically existed, but part of Lithuania is part of Poland in the Middle Ages. Therefore, these borders were very fluid in the east and moving and so forth. And that's why it started at the beginning. That was the big mistake. That instead of dismantling NATO, okay, the Americans pushed for enlarging it. That is a big mistake. Probably, not probably, 100% sure, if NATO was dismantled, we're by far a better situation in Europe, and perhaps even we as Europeans would have been feeling even by far better.
I agree with that.
I have no problems for Russia joining the European Union, for example. If you want to become an extensive, obviously there will be a big problem of parliament, because then the Russians will have a majority in Brussels. But forget that. But I'm talking an idealistic state. You believe in European Union? This is why there is lack of feeling even in Europe nowadays of being European. We tried to do the Mediterranean feelings, the Mediterranean Union, which failed, even before starting, and so forth and so on.
I wanted to ask a question. Hopefully, you can take us to the last 9 minutes or so. So obviously, we've seen NATO enlarge since 1991 at least. So they promised they wouldn't, then they did.
Yeah.
Do you think one of the main causes of that is basically the military-industrial complex kind of exerting its influence over the American system?
It's part of it. That's true. Obviously, it's part of it also that even in these wars, they are testing the old wars and weapons. And even the Russians then tested their own weapons. We have seen it now. Therefore, you've seen it coming in. They are testing their weapons. And it made clear now Russia that is ready even to use nuclear weapons, I think, in the last test. At least that's the message, how I took it now. It could be, I could be mistaken, but I think that message was extremely clear. Obviously, the arms industry has a big interest in America, but I don't think it's really the determining factor. Because
There
could be part of it, and I tell you why it's not a determining factor. Because in America, the determining factor is the selling of guns in a very easy way to the American people. Therefore, and there is the paradox.
Yeah.
The Democrats, they want to limit the sale of weapons in America and home and extending these wars.
Yep.
The Republicans, the contrary. They want free use of weapons. If you want to go to a shop and just buy a weapon, I'm over 18, you just pay and buy a weapon. That shouldn't be stopped. That is your right of freedom to hold a weapon to defend yourself. Okay, this concept will become... but then they are less likely to move on towards outside. Therefore, this is the paradox that we're having. And in front of this paradox, I'm not so confident in thinking that it is the Americans, the arms industry really that is leading the case. Because with the arms industry, there's always a market. There is even most of these arms industries are Israelis.
Yeah.
Okay? And there is the safety of Israel. Therefore, even Trump said, the safety of Israel is paramount. Therefore, they have no problems in developing. Most of these wars that we're fighting is nearly conventional, not conventional, but using drones and so forth, but still, they are not using the last technology weapons. Okay, therefore, the expansion is going to be increased. And the America, with this war or without them, she will have to think of to continue to advance in its nuclear and other sort of weaponry, because even China is expanding. China built a big aircraft carrier. Therefore China, America knows is the biggest problem. And while there were these situation in Syria and these meetings, there were the Chinese entered the Taiwan waters, and there was a lot of tension this week in Taiwan. if you're following the international news. And China made it clear that Taiwan, it wants Taiwan back as part of China. And one day or another, they know that Taiwan will join China. They are trying to... China is China.
Yeah, it is.
Okay, sorry, I'm not saying they are right or wrong. I'm just predicting what's going
China
to
will
happen
do what China will do,
in 5, 10, 50 years. She said China wants Taiwan back, and she will, therefore the only thing to stop is deterrent. But obviously, with the war of Ukraine, it's not going to have this deterrent.
I agree with you.
This is why.
Because China will do what China will do, and that's also an argument I put forward to a lot of people when it comes to Ukraine and Russia. Is that listen, you provoked the West provoked a bear, and the bear got angry and attacked you. Bear in question is Putin. Like, we know he's a dictator. Let's not mince words. We know he's not necessarily a nice guy. I mean, the guy was a KGB agent. So when people say, "Oh my God, I can't believe Putin did something like this," and I'm like, he warned you. He's the type of person to do it. You should have been less naive thinking about it. But then you see just the way the media obviously propagates propaganda 24/7, especially in the West. Where, as we've mentioned already, a completely unprovoked attack on a sovereign democratic country like Ukraine. Again, this is not to belittle any Ukrainians. This is to belittle the media for saying things that are patently untrue. I feel for the Ukrainians, and I feel for all the Russians that are dying, and whatever other ethnicities are in the region. So, when it comes to that. But it's just, it's insane how you see the media's message so constantly repeated, the same 4 words in the same 4 sequence, and it just makes me think, hey, wait, you're not telling me the full story, because imagine
we're hearing one side of the story.
I like the analogy of let's say 2 people get accused of something and they're taken to court. What's the first thing they have to do to make sure that none of them gets caught? Is they get their story straight. And that's what you see with the media. They all have the same story straight, exactly. And it makes me just question, hey, listen, something is not right. But then what do? We ban Russia TV or Russia Today, whatever, like everywhere except in Russia, essentially, and you're only getting one side of the story.
Yeah,
and that's, I think, precisely the problem here when it comes to how people view the actual conflict. They view it with no actual knowledge of historical wars, no actual knowledge of political situations, the context, absolutely nothing of this sort. They just see unprovoked, unjustified war in Ukraine, and let's get on with it. And people forget that Putin is someone who has a lot of power in his hands, and he has the willingness to do something. So,
But probably if America was faced with that situation, she would do the same.
Of course.
How many countries were invaded by America? In the American continent? Panama, okay, these were small countries. They attacked Libya, they attacked Serbia. And there were a lot of provocations. Serbia was an ally of Russia.
Yeah.
Okay, the situation there wasn't that normal, because there were massacres. Of course, there were of Muslims. There were massacres on both sides, incidentally, not on one side. But let's forget. But they attacked, and the destabilization, Libya is still destabilized to this day.
Yeah.
Okay, I'm not defending Gaddafi by any chance. Well, obviously, it's not that the issue. No,
I know a guy.
Like I'm not defending Assad, but coming out now with the prisons of Assad, which were a chamber torture.
Yeah.
Oh, come on. There's nothing to defend, but we're talking here about geo-international politics, which is something different.
Yeah. With that said, we're going to close this episode. Thank you for joining us and giving us your 2 cents, I guess, on the matter. It was a very interesting conversation.
Thank you.
And I guess we will see you in episode 7. Bye-bye.
Thanks.